tell me what's going on in the world according to this.
Yeah, so the super high level of that is just a framework to kind of look through history to see how we have cycles that repeat. And there's a lot of people who study cycles, and there's from lunar cycles and astrology and all that. And there's cycles from 7 years, 18 years, 80 years, 250 years, etc. But I was looking at like 3 main cycles, and I think to really understand the world, to get context, you kind of have to look at multidisciplinary. That's kind of what Bitcoin is, right? Multidisciplinary, to kind of get better context of that. And so when I was looking at these different cycles, it looked like there was like 3 forces in the world. And so change happens, typically kind of opposing forces, and like a pendulum swinging back and forth. And so I like to think that problems create solutions, or solutions to come to problems. So when you look back, we have what I've kind of identified as 3 cycles, and I look at it politically. So on a 250-year time frame. Now there's an 80-year cycle. So like there's a couple 80-year cycles. So like the fourth turning is an 80-year cycle, obviously. There's a regime change cycle. So about every 80 years. It kind of fits into that same fourth turning framework. If I look at it really like 84 years, 3 times 84 equals 252. So it's kind of when you get the triple cycle. That's the big one, 250 years. So 250 years ago was the American Revolution, the French Revolution. 250 years before that was the Protestant Reformation. And so we can kind of go back. So every 250 years, like there's this big political upheaving where it seems like the world has rejected centralization and moved back to decentralization. And, I think it's human nature. We just take things too far. Yeah. And then we correct what we overcorrect. Right. We take that too far. Right, for sure. And then we correct and overcorrect. And so it's like this pendulum that swings back and forth. I kind of look at it like if you were bowling with little kids and you put the bumpers up and the ball just kind of ping-pongs back and forth, right? So about every 250 years, you kind of have this cycle. Of course, it doesn't change in a vacuum, but that's a political revolution cycle. So political ideology changes, the way that we govern ourselves changes. But a lot of that is driven by technology. So about every 50 years, approximately, the contrative wave is 60 years. So on a 40 to 60 year, I call it a 50-year cycle, there's a technological revolution. And every time there's a new technology, it changes the way that we communicate, the way that we organize, et cetera. And so a lot of that has to do with the way that we organize ourselves politically as well. And so we can see about 250 years ago was the start of the Industrial Revolution. And so, for example, that brought us centralizing, brought us into cities and factories. So there's that one. So about every 50 years we've had that, and then we'll dig into that. And then the third one being the financial revolution cycle. And so then technology drives financial markets. So each financial or each technological revolution has driven a financial market. So we've had 5 in the last 250 years. Industrial Revolution, we had steam engine and railways, we had electricity and steel, we had oil and automobiles, we had telecommunications, microprocessors, and now I think we're witnessing the next one. But you can see each financial market, each financial sector has been driven by that. So what's dominated the financial markets over the last 50 years? Telecommunications, internet, technology. What was before that? Ford, GM, GE. What was before that? Steel, oil. Right. And so all 3 of those, I think, work together. But what's interesting is they're on different cycles. So we have about a 250-year political revolution cycle, a 50-year technological revolution cycle, and an 80-year financial revolution cycle. But all 3 are converging right now. And I think that's the big thing, right? So it's like we're kind of getting the double up or the triple up where they're all happening right now. So when you look at we're going through so much change right now, it's because all of that's changing at the exact same time.
Wow. So it's roughly every 250 years, then you get the confluence of all 3. That produces something, a radically new world after all.
A radically new world, exactly. So, 80 years ago, we witnessed a financial revolution where the entire global financial system changed. The pound sterling was the reserve currency of the world. And then we had the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, where the dollar took over the reserve currency of the world.
Right.
If you talk to any of financial analysts, which I know you have extensively, the last 80 years have been about the same, but you have to kind of go back to the 40s to kind of see another financial period like we've had right now. And so, Ray Dalio talks about it in his, credit cycles, business cycles. And so they operate in this like 80-year time frame. And so we're witnessing all of that falling apart. But ultimately, I think it's the technological piece that I'm kind of the most interested in. I think it's driving the most change right now.
Yeah, I agree. Technology drives everything, really. I mean, it seems foundational because it changes what we do for a living. It changes how we engage with the world and with one another.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the base layer of human action in a way. It's like that's what we spend most of our time doing, is engaging with whatever the technological paradigm of the era is.
Exactly.
And you just think about how much these things have changed us. Like, I know me personally, like psychologically, I feel this, I'm strangely addicted to Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, we're in this information society where ideas move so quickly and bank runs happen faster. There's like all these different implications of being in a new paradigm that are almost unimaginable before going into it.
And you start to realize that the current form and structure of our political systems and our business systems are not compatible with where we're at technologically anymore.
Yeah.
And so there's like this mismatch. And so we're going through this state change, right? And if you were like in physics or whatever, when you're going from one state to another, there's this disruptive pattern. It's not smooth.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think it's right before water freezes, right? The molecular activity goes through the roof.
Yeah.
And
or any of the state changes.
Yeah. And then it collapses. So it's like we're going through that tumultuous phase before things shift.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we kind of go through these periods, like I said, because of human nature, where we take things too far. And so we went from, 250 years ago, the American Revolution, where we left the centralization of the monarch and we set up a decentralized government, independent states, right, a small federal government, et cetera. I'm not going to say that was too far, but now we've been trending back towards the centralization model.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty easy for anyone to see. And when I put out on Twitter, a lot of times I'll put out like, this is a signpost of this, pendulum swinging back is what I kind of call it. And a lot of times people call BS on that, right? Because it's like, how can you say we're going back to decentralization? I would argue we've never been more centralized. Yes, that's the whole point.
Right.
And so, with the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization and the World Trade Organization and the UN and the IMF and et cetera, and if you want to look at, the world through a geopolitical lens right now, I mean, it's globalism. It's what you might frame up with the Russia-Ukraine situation is a war against globalism.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's kind of that it tends to be darkest before the dawn thing, right? Because we were very centralized under the medieval church before the printing press sort of blew that out.
Exactly.
It became very decentralized again. That's where it feels like we're at with the nation state and central banking.
And just to pull that back just a little further, so we had the Roman Empire, which was very centralized. Well, first it was a Roman Republic that was decentralized.
Right. Yeah.
And then the Roman Empire centralized all that. When the barbarians came in, it just blew all that apart and decentralized. It was the church that came in that started to centralize that back up because the whole world was, in disarray. And so the church kind of brought order with chivalry and things like that. And they were the ones that started to rebuild the churches, the roads and the bridges and things like that. And it was a great movement, but then that went too far.
That's right.
And then it became centralized and too powerful and too much control. And then the printing press, to your point, blew that apart, decentralized it back to the cottage and farm industry. And then the Industrial Revolution, another piece of technology, started bringing it all back together again.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a great book by Will Durant, and oh man, the title escapes me, but he describes this very dynamic between centralization and decentralization. He calls it the systole and diastole of human history, which is like the beating of a heart, essentially, that we keep doing this as people. And I hope that we're on the cusp of another decentralized revolution, because things are definitely trending negatively right now.
Yeah.
And without something like Bitcoin, I would be very pessimistic for where we are.